And that's something I struggled with in business management, even in martial arts space for years until I got to a level of personal development that I realized it. But holding them accountable is love. Holding them accountable and telling them, you look like you put on some weight. What's going on, man? You doing okay? Like you're not looking healthy. Or if you see them every time you see them, they got a drink. Hey, man, you want to talk? And that's hard. And that is something where I've gotten really angry at myself because I'll have people make a statement and they'll make an excuse. And I would be guilty of going, yeah, I understand. No, I don't understand. I don't. And forcing myself to tell them, what's stopping you? I'd have dad at school. Oh, I wish I get out there like you do with your kids. Why can't you? Well, I haven't done this my whole life. So lots of people haven't. Your kid hasn't done it their whole life. And telling them, just come out here, quit making the excuses and realizing that you're doing it from a place of caring. You're not trying to break them down. You're trying to save them.
Matthew, as a world champion martial artist, what's the biggest skill, trade, or just discipline that you've learned in the martial arts that has then been able to allow you to succeed in your entrepreneurship journey?
It's kind of beat to death in the martial arts world, but never giving up. Just doing it over and over again. And like I tell some of my students, when you take the mats to compete, just like in life, you can't do it trying to beat the other person all the time. It's the Ford versus Ferrari movie. The gentleman that's driving for Ford talks about the perfect lap. And so I use that to describe it to my students. You want to get out there and fight your perfect fight, the best you can. Or if you're running a weapon form or a kata form, an open hand, you want to run the perfect run. So focus on doing it to the highest level of your ability and then see where the judges place you. I find that when I get out there and I step off the mats, I'm like, whoo, man, I was on a different level there. I was dialed in. Then the judges see it. You can't look at it based on any of your competition. It's you versus you. It's you doing the best you can do. I'm not the guy next to me. I'm not the fighter. Maybe that day was their day. Maybe they were dialed in that day and I wasn't. I've had a lot of those where I step up, my brain's on everything else. I'm thinking about work, the kids, whatever. And I'm not dialed in. And I watch one of my friends that I compete with get up and I'm like, ooh, man, you look good today. I'm like, oh, okay. And then my brain will go, oh, hey, you better step it up. Justin's looking good today. Brett's looking good. You better get out there. And it's taking that mindset to it of not so many people take that loss and it just destroys them or they just beat themselves up. Oh, I can't believe I lost again or this or that. With me and with any of my students that I work with, when we step off the mats, it's how did you do? And I want to know, did you do your best? And they'll be like, you know what? My footwork could have been better. I felt a little wobbly. Great. I never want to hear, well, I got third place. Even if sometimes we'll like have a bad run and we'll place like first, we'll still go over and be like, so what could we have done better?
I love that, man. And as a bodybuilder, I spent a decade in the kind of the competitive world of bodybuilding. Like that was the mentality that I always took. And I think in bodybuilding, that's easy to understand because the real work in bodybuilding, the real competition is showing up in the gym. The competition is more of a pageant than a real competition, right? Like you're out there, you're presenting kind of like the hard work that you've put in. I wasn't blessed with the greatest genetics. I knew that very early on. So for me, it was about learning some of these disciplines and then extracting them and saying, okay, how do I apply this into other areas of my life? But I think in a hand-to-hand or martial arts sports, like that's got to be something that maybe is a separator from people that are winning at the highest level. Because I'm assuming most people going in is like, I got to beat that guy, not I got to beat the previous version of myself. Is that something that you've realized in like the competition world is like so few get that part that it is you versus you, even though there's a person standing on the other side of the mat?
Yes, a friend of mine's a physique competitor, and her and I had this discussion recently. She was getting ready for a comp that we're in love with the journey. I love the process of getting ready for the tournaments, planning them out, looking at where we're going to go. Okay, we got a couple grassroots ones, then we've got worlds, or then, like this weekend, I'm headed to a large one in Atlanta. Like, I like that part. I like to, I was sitting at home the one day and I got a text message from one of my competitors. I just got done doing my workout, doing my run. I sat down, I'm going to kick my head back and I got a text. Hey, can you meet me at the school? I really need to practice something. I was up and out of the house so fast. I was exhausted, but I'm in love with that process. And when someone else wants to get better, I'm in love with being there and helping and doing what I can to help them get better because that's what Tara and I discussed, her 10 years of physique competing. I remember when she first told me she was going to do it. and we were breaking it down the other day about it. It's just that our love of the process. She got some feedback from the judges. She goes, okay, I'm going to redirect. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to hit my exercises differently. I'll do the same thing. I'll get feedback from the judges or my coach. I'll adjust maybe I'll up my cardio. Or for Worlds last year, I did everything I could to put on 10 pounds. Previous year, when I competed, I was a little lighter. I was told my power wasn't there. So then I spent a year just getting heavier. So I had the power when I went back. And I love that part of the journey. Once I get on the mats, like anything can go wrong. I stumbled at a tournament 2 weeks ago. I just turned and wobbled a little, cost me my win. Hey, it happens. But it's the journey, and that's what I believe separates those people that are really, really good from the ones that just show up at the tournament and shake it off. It's that love of the journey, because you don't have to be talented. I was not a talented child martial artist. I was overweight. I was clumsy, but I just loved doing it.
Is there any value, though, in your opinion, of, I don't want to say wallowing in the loss or wallowing in the defeat, right? I don't think that's the right word that I'm looking for here, but accepting it, looking at it, learning from it. I'm assuming that, despite it being focused on the journey of growth, like there's something we have to get out of breaking down the loss, analyzing it. In the team sports, it's the game film. Like, how do you kind of have that balance between those two?
You have to cherish the wins. You can't just, no one's going to tell you, it's all about the journey. No, the main love is the journey, but you want to win. But when you lose, you have to be honest. Why did I lose? And we'll take a few minutes after the match. I've had, competitors come off the mat crying, not in a, I hate this, I forget this type attitude, but in a upset because they put in the work. And that's good. You got to have that heart. So we stand there, they get it out. I'm like, okay, you done now? Cool. Where did we go wrong today? Man, my feet were really sweaty. I didn't get prepared beforehand, or my nerves. I worked with a mental coach, hypnotist for a while, because I would struggle before getting on the mats. If one of my team or one of my students was adjacent to me competing, I would really struggle to pull my headspace into me competing. So you got to analyze it, and you got to understand that you lost. I mean, it sucks. Nobody wants to lose. You don't go to an event like that, be like, I can't wait to get last. It's got to hurt, but you can't let it ruin your day. It's just like waking up having a rough morning. It can't ruin the rest of your day. That's why I always tell parents too, like I'll get new parents, they'll sign up a child for a tournament, they'll just do one event. Like, no, 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 do a couple, because if they lose really big in the first one, it normally fuels them for the second one. Like, we get them hyped up. I get them back in there. I was like, don't just do one, because now their day is going to be ruined because they don't get that chance to redeem themselves. And at a younger age, with an adult, it's like, all right, man, you got 3 months. Then we got another comp. You're going to redeem yourself. But with a kid, man, it's a lifetime.
Yeah. I got to assume that martial arts training and the competitive side of this has to be such a valuable growth opportunity for the kids, right? And it sounds like that's a lot of the coaching and work that you do with your academy. Is it mostly with kids?
Teens, adults, and kids. I mean, my main instructors and staff, my top level black belt competitors have been with me. Riley's been with me 11 years, Kendall 7 years. So they were little kids when they started competing, but now that they're at a higher level, they are teens. I have adults. I've got a fighter coming up on a fight card that's 23. Um, it. But in those years of their life, though, for the kids, and it helps the adults too. But I feel with the kids, it really molds their personalities as they come up. Most of my black belts, I'll use my child Benjamin, who just turned 11. He competes all the time, has been since he was 3 with me. Sometimes he's up, sometimes he's down. He went several years where he never won a medal. We'd leave the tournament, and he'd be like, I know, not today. I'm like, well, we're working. But it's the way we approached it. But when anytime a competition comes up, whether it's a race at school or no matter what it is, he never talks to me about, oh, Dad, I hope I do good. He's always like, oh, get in first place. Like, and it's almost like it's this really weird balancing act as a parent, because my children both compete. My daughter's 9. They compete side by side. They have with me since they were little. They're competitive, and they're competitive with each other. Like, they'll argue over who chewed their food the most, or sometimes I'm just like, oh, whew, having strong, independent, competitive children is rough, but it molds their personalities. My teen students, some of the things that they do in school. Kendall, for example, is the district vice president for DECA, and it's a business association. She's 17 and she oversees like 7 or 8 cities. She's in charge. She goes around and speaks at Rotaries and to Chamber of Commerce, all these events to adult business owners at 17. She couldn't do that without the martial arts. The martial arts is what she just spoke in the event I had about how the martial arts did teach that to her.
Yeah, it's going to give them a competitive advantage for life, and I think that's a missing concept that I think a lot of today's generation doesn't have, is that everything that you're going to embark on, whether it's in the marketplace as a business person, an entrepreneur trying to launch something, you're competing against your direct competition. The podcasting space, right? There's 2.1 million podcasts just here in the US. Like, I get a report every single week, right? And it's like, I celebrate like when we make it into the top 100. I celebrate when we make it into the top 200. Not that I'm like trying to take anybody down, but I am competing against, I mean, even guys like Joe Rogan and some of the biggest ones out there. It's like people have limited time on the shows they want to listen to. So if I'm not focused on how I'm improving in the competitive side of this thing, we're not going to grow this show. If you're not an entrepreneur, you're not a business person, but you're working in the corporate world and you're trying to excel in your career, you're competing against the guy that's sitting next to you in the other cubicle. Hell, as men out there, you're competing in the dating marketplace. Like, this skill set of competition, of the journey of growth, like, it is a missing part of, I think, today's generation.
Well, it's a lot of times it's confused with if you're really competitive. I did a demonstration one time with my students. I put some cones out on the floor and I told them, I said, one of those cones has $100 bill under it. They, not like violently, but they almost tore each other apart, like pulling, throwing, toss. It was all the teams. It was hilarious to get that $100 bill. There was no $100 bill. I explained to them, I said, then how come when we go to a tournament, basically when you're point sparring or you're fighting without no knockouts type stuff, the other person has 10 points. You got to get those 10 points first to win. Why do you wait? Why do you take turns? Why do you hesitate? I told you there's $100 under that cone. You almost tore each other apart. They're like, well, it's sometimes being very competitive and being aggressive on the mats is mistaken as being rude or violent. And it's like, no, there's a difference in being competitive. I'm very competitive. My Some of my closest friends, we work together on stuff, but we get on the mats, we turn it on because it's disrespectful for them for me not to bring my A game. And then we hug at the end. And we're, man, that was great. Like world's Brett, who has been a mentor and just a great friend. We ended up in the finals against each other over a year ago. I took second place to him. I was so pumped and motivated to go against him. We were going for a world title. He comes up to me beforehand. He goes, "Hey man, you're overextending your shoulder a little. Fix that." Because he had been coaching me up to this point. And that ethic, that character trait that man would be before we go against each other would correct me and give me a tip that he's like, "Hey, I noticed in your last one you overextended." We got done and we walked off the mats. We were hugging, high fiving, like both of our teams were watching us. Like it was the coolest moment ever. But people mistake that being really competitive and getting in your head and getting in the zone and getting ready for like, oh, they're angry, they're aggressive, they're mean. No, if you want something, you got to go out and get it, but you don't have to disrespect people to do it. But that is, I've had this discussion with some like old school martial artists, and we've discussed. I'm like, where has that gone? If a student comes up and they're super aggressive and they're into it, people will be like, oh, they're mean. No, they're not. They're shaking hands. They're being polite to the coaches. They go over and make sure the other person's okay after the match. They're nice people. They just want to win. We all signed up for the same event. We're all here in life. If you're trying to get a promotion at work, well, guess what? The guy next to you, like you said, they are too. So what's wrong with working a little harder and putting that in there? You don't have to do anything unethical. But it's such a weird thing in society. But I see it making a comeback with so many people like yourself and different ones that are having conversations like this, that I've got faith in the future. But it does seem like there for a while, oh, if you're super competitive, oh, that's not good. And it's like, no, that's it's not how
Yeah,
it is.
and I appreciate that, man. I think real competition, what we're speaking of here, the sportsmanship, the respect, it is the highest form of respect for another person. Like, I'm going to show up, give my best. If we're competing in something, whether it's on the mat or in the gym or on the court. Hell, even if it's pickleball, right? I'm playing pickleball with my mom and my sister and my nephew. It's like we're out there competing. It's like because we love each other, right? And this is why I love MMA. I love watching because these guys will beat the living shit out of each other, and then they embrace it and hug it and dap it up, and it's like that's what this is all about, right? And I know you're a man of faith. Like I think that's what God has called us to do is like push towards becoming the absolute best version of ourselves. We're going to need people that are better than us. We're going to need competition. We're going to need challenge to ultimately unlock this next level of potential. And I see so many men that are just, well, they substitute their competition to video games and fantasy sports, right? It's like they play it off and they live through the lens of other men, not their own life.
And that's something that, in my journey through life, I'd be teaching classes and I'd have a kid. I had to walk out of the gym one night. I had to go out back. I had a little boy come in. Mom was dragging him onto the mats to do class. He was screaming. He was panicking. He was freaking out. He was having all these problems. And dad was sitting there on his phone and just kind of did one of these. And I had to go out back. So I wanted to hit him so bad. I was so angry because that poor kid was just terrorized. The poor wife was struggling. She was so embarrassed. I had to stop my class because I don't allow the staff. If a kid wants to do class, great. But if the kid doesn't want to do class, because I've had parents, I'll just drag them on there. No, we're not physically dragging your child. I picked little kids up for them, like, oh, come on with me, buddy, and walked them out. That's different than a screaming child. But I came home and I like I told my wife, I wasn't mad at her. I was just so upset. And I realized that seeing all of this and it being shown to me, it was God telling me to do something about it. Share your voice and do something because I started having fathers come up and ask me questions. Hey, how do you train with your kids? How's that work? Because I coach my own children at tournaments and we're there every weekend and I coach them. It sucks. I'm not coaching like dad. I'm coaching like their coach. I'm saying hard things. And I had people ask me about it and I realized that we've got to speak up more because there's a lot of guys that I just don't think see it. I realized like we've talked like I love personal development books. And I'd be like, oh, like Tim Grover's book, he says this, and people would go, who? Or I'd mention another book. What's that? Be like, well, Andy Frisella, what, who? In my brain, for some reason, I thought everybody consumed that type of content because it's been life changing for me. There's days I wake up and I hear somebody like I've been going through so many of your podcasts. I hear so many great people, and I'm like, I'm ready today. I realized that I had to start doing something about it because these guys they're in their video games. Whether they're at home with their kids, they're detached from them. They're not doing the things with them and this isn't a knock on ladies, but women tend to nurture more. A man's job, I feel like genetically women are trying to raise a child. Men, especially if it's a son, are needing to help develop a man, not only by example, but by lessons. And I see that like a lady I have a lot of women that are single and bring children into the school and they'll make so many excuses for these young men. And then when I step in, like, hey, bud, you were late today. We're not doing that late stuff. You need to be on time. You're old enough. You need to be in the car and doing everything you can to help mom get you here. Oh, the lady lost it. How dare him say that? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you told me when you brought him here, you were bringing him here for a positive male influence. A positive male's on time. I'm 30 minutes early. I find there's a lot of guys that I watch them that want to say these things, that want to stand up and set the example for their kids, but maybe because they don't want to fight with their wife or they don't want to look like that bad guy. Like I've stopped in the store before and reprimanded my children for stuff and had people give me dirty looks. I'm like, what? You want them to steal hubcaps off your car later? Or you want me to raise a good child? Which is it? And I find there's a lot of guys out there that I don't want to say they don't have the courage, but maybe they weren't taught that they can do that.
Well, they don't have the courage. Let's be honest in what it is, right? If they're allowing their fear of the outcome of their action to prevent them from taking the action, that's lacking courage. Like that's the definition of courage, is the ability to move despite despite the fear. I don't want to feel like we're beating up on men. I can do enough of that on my own. I think hopefully some of this is resonating with the audience, though, because I know that's who's going to hear this conversation, right? Or the guys that are out there that are seeking growth. Maybe they don't have some of these influences. So, maybe talk a little about kind of your story and kind of how some of these things began to kind of click for you. Was this something that you had like from an early influence? Like, did you have real strong male role models in your life, or was this something you've had to learn through development, and even then kind of your journey into personal development as well? And we can kind of walk us through that story a little bit if you can.
You know what? My father was great. My father's 40 years old when I was born. I have older siblings, and I feel there was a lot of stuff that he regretted from maybe the way he'd raised them, choices he had made with them, choices he had made in his life, to where he was a lot stricter on me.
Like a
Um,
second chance with you then? Is that kind of
yeah,
what he was
I would
doing?
think so. There was a lot of stuff that I got things that my siblings didn't get because my dad's job had changed. He was developed in his career then, and I was an only child. We had moved to the suburbs out of St. Louis County, and I had those things. But I also, whereas my siblings got to run around with their friends a lot at 14, I was told no. My dad always told me you are what you're perceived to be, and if you're going to hang out with somebody up the street that's making bad choices, you're going to be perceived to be that. And as a teen, I thought, what a dick. I wish I got to run loose like my friends. And then as I got into my 20s, man, a lot of them have gotten in a lot of trouble. A lot of them had struggled with a lot of stuff. And my dad put me in martial arts. He used to tell everybody, I'll spend all the money in the world on Matt's martial arts. It'll be cheaper than ever having to hire an attorney. When I was 19, my brother got in trouble for methamphetamines. And that attorney bill, my dad and I did the math. That attorney bill cost twice what my martial arts career had ever cost. And it was true. But having that, I always did have a strong role model around martial arts. And then in my jobs later, I was very lucky that I had different managers, district managers, coaches in martial arts that would take the time to explain stuff to me that it honestly at that time didn't resonate, but it's stuff I still fall back on now. It's stuff I still go back to, lessons that I learned. And when I see these people, the ones that are still alive, I try to tell them, hey, you used to say this to me all the time. They'd be like, oh, dang, man, that was like 25 years ago. Like, yeah, I still live by that. Thank you. Because it did mean a lot. But I really didn't do any personal development stuff until a friend of mine had shared Grant Cardone's book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of hate out there for him right now, whatever. I've never paid a guy for coaching, so I'm not mad at him. But in that book, he talked about liking to work and liking to hustle. And everyone had always told him he was depressed or he was, had ADHD or OD, you just need to chill out more. Well, I've heard that my whole life. And that dialed it in for me. It dialed in that I wanted to work harder. I wanted to do better. There was something, and I think he said it. I don't know. Sometimes, and you'll know this from all the books and everything, sometimes the quotes get mixed up. But it was, if you have the talent and the ambition to succeed, it's your responsibility because you can help others. And if you sit on the sidelines and say, well, I should have done that, you're hurting everyone around you because you're not setting the example and you're not putting yourself into a place to help them. And that's what dialed it in for me because I wasn't a greedy person. I wasn't sitting there going, I wonder how I can make $1 million. I just wanted to be successful. I just wanted to do more. I wanted to hustle. And that's what kind of started that whole journey for me, was doing that. And then as I continued to learn, being like, oh, I can do more. And realizing that, yeah, I had the martial arts school and I built my painting company, got 7 figures of the painting company, was able to do a lot of good things. But I realized I could do more with my message and do more by sharing all the stories and sharing books with people. Like whenever I get invited to someone's house, I take a personal development book that I feel will fit where they're at and I gift them a book. And I tell them, I'm nothing personal. I think you'd really enjoy reading this. I just felt like it was my job to go do that. And I feel like that's something in the past 6 months that, I started going back to church, that God was sending me to do. And I was not a person to say, oh, God wants me to do this or go with God, or just really wasn't that type. I used to tell everybody, well, I'm not really that religious. That was like the most cringy saying ever. Now that, he woke me up and said, hey, buddy, you better start listening to these hints or I'm gonna give you a real reason.
Yeah, I definitely want to circle back there. Maybe if you're open to maybe talking about what that was for you. How has your definition of success kind of evolved over time? Because you said it wasn't about greed or making the most money, but it was about becoming successful. So how are you defining it? Maybe back in the early days, and then once you kind of hit some of the financial milestones, how'd you kind of redefine that? And then what does it even mean to you today? Because I think that's something that a lot of people get caught up in, is like, I want to be successful. But then you ask them, like, well, what does that actually mean? And then they don't have a clear definition of what the success means to them.
Well, I think a lot of people too don't realize that as you develop as an entrepreneur or even as a human, your definition is going to change. What you want in life is going to change. You can't hold. I see people are like, oh, that person changed what they're doing. They hate on them. You can't do that. For me, I want to be an entrepreneur. That to me was successful. I was going to open my school and be an entrepreneur. As that developed, I realized that there were levels to entrepreneurship. I was just a solopreneur. I had my business. I didn't really have any staff. I had some assistants that helped for pocket change, nothing great. But I didn't want multiple martial arts schools. I knew that with my personality, I wouldn't enjoy having multiple schools and staffing them and growing them. I wanted to be on the mats teaching, and I knew I didn't know how to do that yet. So I wanted to build my painting company. I've been a painter, but I wanted to build it based off of running a business with staff. I didn't want to just go out and paint houses myself. I knew that's where I would have to start, but I wanted to grow it because then it was like, well, I'm an entrepreneur, but man, this guy over here's got 7 employees. Like he's really making a difference. Those people, they rely on his business to be successful now. Like, boom, that's a different level of having people that, they got to rely on you to make their income every month. I was like, wow, that's a new level. So that's where it started with building the painting company. And then as we did that, I started being able to give back, and not just give back. Like I would, martial arts school, I'd donate some t-shirts, little $100 things. With the painting company, I was able to work with a couple different programs and churches and donate some $20,000 so paint jobs that would help them. I found out later helped them go on to grow and achieve other goals. I just thought I was throwing a paint job out there and helping something in the community. Well, then I found out later that they had been struggling. The church, for example, mentioned this the other day, to break over a boundary of new members. And by the paint job I donated allowed them to finish a space, and they attributed that to giving them the room to actually grow. Never looked at it that way. But as I kept doing things and hit the, we Boyer painting went from 0 to 7 figures in 18 months. I didn't even stop to notice it really. Like I noticed it and I was like, wow, that's really cool. But it wasn't, and I didn't do a whole lot. My wife and I went to dinner because I thought that's what I should do. I'm like, well, we got to celebrate it. Let's go have dinner. And we went out, like, woo, we did our first $1 million in business. But then I realized I liked giving back. And so my thought was, well, just grow the business. Like in my community, the really successful businesses just pour back into the community and they pour back into others. So I was like, well, I want to do that more. I'll just paint a lot more houses. Well, all that did was make me busier to where I couldn't do more. So that's where it kind of started. I kind of got bummed out, kind of got depressed, was trying to figure things out. And, got hooked up with Get Attention STL, and we started the podcast to feature local businesses. Although it would be a cool way to give back. Started having all these conversations with people going, wow, okay, this is where people are like, wow, that was just a great podcast. You made me feel so comfortable. A lot of my people are first time guests. So they're nervous. They bring in notebooks full of notes and key things. And my goal is always keep them so busy they don't even read it. But I realized I wanted to continue to have those conversations. So I started looking at what can I do to impact more with the experiences and stuff that I've had in life, the students I've coached, the failures I've had in business, the projects that went wrong, or the working with an employee that I went right and I should have went left. Like I learned so much from people sharing those stories. These million and billionaire that go on podcasts and they talk and they share these stories is so valuable that I was like, ooh, I wanna help people like that too. How can I do that? So it kind of started with I wanted to be an entrepreneur, then I wanted to have all these employees, and I realized that, man, the thing that really fulfills you at the end of the day is what it always has for me. I just didn't see it, and that was coaching and being an instructor and working with people. Cool. How can I do that on a bigger level? How can I help more? And it's I'll be honest, it's greedy because it makes me feel good. And I feel good making that impact. So you almost feel bad 'cause you're like, I know you got a lot out of this, but man, I did too. And that fills me more. But the reality of it is too, you still have to provide an income. So you still have to have the businesses and everything like that. You can't be like, I just want to spread good through the world. Well, mortgage company doesn't, you could tell them that it's not going to work.
Yeah, you're not Mother Teresa out there in the world. There's been only maybe a handful of people that have been able to focus on that. But I do think that maybe some of the most selfless acts are going to be selfish by nature, right? Like we're gonna get just as much out of these things that kind of light us up. I'm very similar to you, and like always knowing from a very, very young age, even as a kid, right? Like entrepreneurship was the path. I mean, when you're kind of coming up in school, it's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like some kids knew they wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, a pediatrician or, a veterinarian. It was like, business owner. Like I didn't know what the business was, but it was like I'm going to be doing something. I did the baseball card things. I sold candy on the back of the school bus. Had a little lawn care business before it was a multi-billion-dollar industry. This is like coming up in the '90s, right? Like the kid, I'd load up dad's lawnmower, I'd fill the tank up with gas, and I'd carry the weed eater, and I'd just knock on people's door. Hey, your grass is a little bit long. Like, be happy to cut it for you. It was like that was how I kind of cut my teeth, and it taught me the value of hard work. It taught me the value of like if you want to go out there and get something, like I did it because I wanted to buy things, like right, like I wanted to buy the Air Jordans, I wanted to have the authentic jerseys to kind of rock it at school and stuff like that. But your journey here, I want to kind of maybe talk through like some of the development skill sets and kind of growth within you, because we have a lot of guys out there that are maybe listening right now and have that dream of entrepreneurship, scared to take the leap, right? Because they don't even know where to start. But you kind of talked about this progression model of going from the solopreneur kind of owner operator, right? Like you're the business owner, but you're also the business. Then there's the business owner or the manager, right? Like you're still involved in the day to day, but you're managing a small team. And then you get to a point where you're really like the CEO, like you're the founder, like you've removed yourself from being in the business and you're casting the vision and maybe managing some of this team. So those are kind of how I see it, is kind of like the three stages, and then maybe have an exit and stuff like that. Then you maybe become kind of an investor. We don't need to go down that road. But speaking from like the owner operator to manager, then into maybe the CEO where you're kind of leading a team underneath you, talk through like the development of skills within you of what it takes to move through those progressive models.
And it's all about personal development, learning to manage people, learning to share that vision. And I'll be honest, I'm still working on all this. There's days that I know I could show up better for them, but I'm still learning. There's pivots, there's curveballs thrown at you, but that's the biggest thing that I noticed. If you want to go from that one step to the other, it's learning and learning how to have that vision. You can't just hire employees and they show up and everything's gonna be great. We all go to businesses where people do that, and you're like, wow, this is shitty, but that's because there's no vision there. And you have to project that. And that was something that's always been a struggle for me, because with my martial arts school, I'm coach, I'm almost dad to some of these teens that have been with me for 10 years. Like I've talked them through so many late night things to where when I say, we're gonna go to this tournament, we're gonna work hard, we're gonna do this, it's yes, they're in. And they've been with me so long that we're all very similar in that nature. But then when I started hiring in painters, I'm bringing in people from all walks of life. I'm bringing in guys that maybe made a mistake in their younger years and are in jail and have gotten out, reformed, or working hard, but they're just working a day at a time to make sure they don't screw up and go back. Maybe I got a guy that got into painting because his uncle painted and he just learned to paint. It really isn't what he likes. It's not his dream. Well, how do I motivate that guy? I've hired quite a few guys that had sales experience but didn't like working indoors, and they liked the change every day of a different surrounding in painting, and sometimes being outside, sometimes being inside. So now I got to take someone that's got a great vision. Now I got to teach them how to paint. But by pouring into my own personal development and learning as much as I can, then I'm able to teach that. Then I'm able to work with that. Then I find tools, or I come across quotes, or I'll hop on a podcast, listen to something, be like, oh man, that's the word I've been looking for. I've had a great example that I've wanted to talk to students about for years, and the wording that I had heard when I was younger was not correct or politically correct at all to say these days. And a gentleman on your podcast the other day called it the winner and the whiner. And I was like, oh, that's the wording I've been looking for to describe this to people without sounding like a total jerk. I was like, that's perfect. So then I was able to construct some of my stuff, and I was talking to my son about it, and it resonated with him phrasing it that way. And you learn all this and you pour all this into yourself so that then you can teach them. And until you can do that, and until you can understand too, and I see this with business owners all the time, they think everyone should be just as dialed in as they are. and you don't know what's going on at their home life. I have guys all the time, they'll have some slip ups on a job. Pretty caring about that. I don't go in and scream at everybody. That's one of the reasons I actually have employees, because in the blue collar trades, that's super common. Just scream at everyone, fire them. And I'll find out about a week later, that their wife left or their kid was sick. Maybe something they don't want to share with me right then. Maybe there's people around, they don't want to talk about it. I've gotten better about being, hey man, you want to come out to the truck for a minute? Let's chat. And trying to have those conversations after I kind of learned that. So really for anyone that's wanting to go through those, you have to pour into yourself, because the better you get and the better you learn and that you understand the self-disciplined and understand people, the more you can lead them to where then you can grow to that next level.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to be able to lead. Yeah, we're not going to be able to lead people that are more developed than you. And I know some people may take that the wrong way, but like if you're the owner and it's your company, first of all, nobody's going to care about your business more than you do. It's the responsibility of the CEO, the founder, to cast a vision big enough for the company and where the things are going that everybody else's vision fits within that one, right? But it's also like people aren't going to respect you. Like if they're at I think it was actually Skylar Lewis. We unpacked this a couple episodes back. Like if you're trying to hire, let's say 8 9s on the development scale, but you're operating at a 6 or 5 personally, like they're not going to respect you. You got to constantly be growing. You got to constantly be improving yourself to be able to attract that next level of talent, to be able to scale the organization where it is you're trying to go.
Oh, for sure. And if you're not taking care of yourself and you go to hire an employee, comes in, they're physically fit, they've got a good report, they got a new car, you pull up in a busted ass car, you're not put together, you're not taking yourself, they're not going to work with you. I won't take on, if I go to bid, like say a contractor, larger client, and they don't come out and present themselves like someone successful, I'm not interested in working for them, because I can already foresee how bad it's going to be, how rough it's going to be. One of my hardest conversations I have at the martial arts school is I have parents come in that are overweight, not putting themselves first. They're depressed. You can tell they're indulging in alcohol too much or whatever, and they'll want to tell me about how much their kid's messing up, and I just don't know why he's not doing this, or what they need to. My kid, if they're going to do this, they need to run more. It's like my kid runs. You know why? Because I run with him. My kids do that stuff. When I say let's go practice katas, they might fight with me a little bit, but I'm on the mats with them. I'm not that overweight parent screaming at them to do something and then, all right, let's swing through Wendy's. You can't do that. You can't do that as a leader either. You can't expect, like, I'll go on paint jobs still with the guys. I'll go paint with them, and my lines are straight, and I'm just as fast, if not faster. And they respect that. They know it. Oh, he can get up here and paint. I'm not just going to tell him, well, I want you to do this and this. I'll run up the ladder and do it. Now, I'm not going to do their job for them, but they need to know that I'm capable of doing it. So it's not that there's no excuse for them to make. Well, Matt, I guess I got to go up there and do it too. My students, if I tell them we're going to get up this big tournament, we're going to get on stage, we're going to do all this stuff, I'm right there with them, because I'm leading them. I'm not just telling them what to do.
Yeah, the parallels here from business owner and running a team and then parenting, like I love that we're kind of hitting hard a little bit here on some of the dads out there, but it's so true, man. Your kids are going to catch so much more from seeing than what they hear. I think Ed Milet says, it's caught, not taught, right? It's like if you're not living up to a standard that you're trying to preach upon them, like they may not be fully developed, but they're developed enough to know that like you're a fraud, and they may do it in the moment, but the disrespect is just going to continue to dwindle and dwindle. And before time, it's like that kid's going to have zero respect for anything that comes out of your mouth. And now you got a kid out there that's kind of running wild on his own out in the world.
Well, because you're setting a precedent with words, but you're not doing it physically. And I'll be honest, that was the biggest thing with me staying in shape, taking care of myself and stuff, is as my children got older and I realized, like, I would see them do things, I'd be like, oh, that's a man, that, phrase it, just whatever. It's like, whoa, that came out of my mouth. Get a little tension between me and the wife, because she runs the businesses with me. We'd argue a little bit. I'd hear some of that attitude in my son. And I'd be like, man, I just beat myself up and realize how much they just soak it in. So it's like, what are we doing this morning, Dad? We're going to the gym. Oh, I don't want to go to the gym. I know you don't ever want to go to the gym. Then you love every minute of it while we're there. We go to the gym, work out. We go mountain bike. We go do things. And I'll have people say, oh man, I just wish my kids could do all that stuff too. then buy a bike and go mountain bike with them. They don't care if you're fat and out of shape. They just want you to do it with them. And guess what? Maybe you guys will lose weight together. And there's a lot of great parents out there to do that stuff, but I feel a lot of adults and men I feel are worse about it than anything. They make excuses. Well, it's easy for Matt to do. He owns his own businesses. Bro, if I had a 9 to 5, oh man, that's so much free time. I can't even imagine it. I mean, the big joke is, oh, I remember my first part-time job. It's if I can do it with my schedule, if guys, like, I get a lot of motivation from some of these really big industry giants when I see them at the gym, and it's like, dude, you got 300 employees, 500 employees, 1,000 employees. Like, even myself, I'm like, dude, how the hell do you get to the gym? That has got to be a nightmare. And then I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. A friend called my wife the other day, called me too, but my phone was set down, and he said he woke up and he didn't want to go work out. And he goes, if dang it, if I didn't pull up my story and Matt was at the gym, he goes, tell your husband I'm on my way to the gym. And when I had multiple conversations with people like that, that made me realize that we may not know who's watching, but they are watching, whether it's our peers or our kids. And if you don't hold yourself to that standard, you can't expect those around you to. And that's where that peer group starts to come in too, with having other people around you, because you can't be the only one.
Yeah. Well, it's time prioritization, right? We all have the same amount of hours. Why are certain individuals able to do all these things that we say we want to do? Well, they're probably not, sitting in front of the tube at 7 o'clock, watching the game, screaming at, if you're the thing that you're most passionate about is your home team and how well they performed. And, if the only time your kid ever sees you scream and yell and be excited is because Steven from the team hit a home run and you're walking around with Joey's name on your background, like, you're not setting a good precedence for, your confidence as a man. Your kid's going to model that same behavior.
Oh, always. And they pick up on all of it. They pick up on all of it. They pick up on everything you do. And like you said, if that's the only time they're seeing you get excited, well, then that's what they're going to follow too. And they're going to be sitting on their phone all the time, and they're going to want to play video games all the time. And it's depressing when I see it. We have a Mother's Day and a Father's Day event at my martial arts school. Father's Day event was last night. I had 13 dads show up, 14 with me. Mother's Day, I had 50 moms. And I talked to the dads. Yeah, I started to get angry at the beginning, bro. I really did. I was like, because I posted a thing in our group a couple days before it. I'm like, guys, what's up with this sign up sheet? And I was trying to be nice because I was getting a little wound, and um, you know, that's pathetic that it's that different. But I told to the dads last night, I said, I want to thank you guys. I was like, we're facing an epidemic in this country of fathers that don't show up. So I appreciate you guys coming tonight, even if it was for 45 minutes, to have a cookie, to get out here on the mats, let your kids show you how to do a kick. I know we didn't do anything groundbreaking that night, but you guys are here. My buddy Pat had been in a coal power plant all day working on an elevator that was, close probably 200 degrees. He was fried. And he's like, I'm here. Where's everybody else at? He said, and he's a big old boy, was in a little elevator in a hot place. And he's like, I'm here. And we were both kind of wound up. He was like, where's you have 150 students. Where's the 100 dads at? Like, and it's sad. So I made sure to tell the ones who are there, I'm like, I'm proud of you guys, because this is where you need to be. I appreciate you guys coming here. You don't have to get out on the mats with your kid and kick like I do. Well, I've been doing this for 30 years. It's different for me, but just coming up here and showing up, just showing up and doing something, showing interest in what your kid's doing instead of trying to get them to have interest in what you're doing. It's killing these kids, and it's so sad.
Yeah. I lean to the optimist as like you as well, right? I do think that we're on, the verge of maybe the pendulum kind of swinging back, right? It's that old saying, hard times create, strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. We're somewhere in kind of that, that pendulum swinging back to, we're going through some hard times, here in the States and across the world, right? The economy is not the great that it's ever been. Unemployment, we can get all down that political rabbit hole. We don't need to go there today. But because of shows like this, because of guys like you that are out there doing it locally, by having platforms where we can kind of broadcast this globally, you have some of the great, influencers out there that are really calling on men to level up, so I don't want to feel like this is doom and gloom and we're just beating men up. Like, a lot of you guys out there are listening to this, but we need the ones that are listening, that are consuming this right now. We need those 13 fathers that showed up to be the peers that their peers need them to be. Like, we need men holding other men accountable to level up.
And that's something I struggled with in business management. even in martial arts space for years until I got to a level of personal development that I realized it. But holding them accountable is love. Holding them accountable and telling them, hey, you look like you put on some weight. What's going on, man? You doing okay? Like you're not looking healthy. Or if you see them every time you see them, they got a drink. Hey, man, you want to talk? And that's hard. And that is something where I've gotten really angry at myself because I'll have people make a statement and they'll make an excuse. And I would be guilty of going, yeah, I understand. No, I don't understand. I don't. And forcing myself to tell them, what's stopping you? I'd have dad at school. Oh, I wish I could get out there like you do with your kids. Why can't you? Well, I haven't done this my whole life. So lots of people haven't. Your kid hasn't done it their whole life. And telling them, just come out here, quit making the excuses, and realizing that you're doing it from a place of caring. You're not trying to break them down. You're trying to save them. You never know. I had a father to come up and we had a few conversations and he him and hawed and I kind of started giving him some crap about it and he found out later he'd been diagnosed diabetic. He cleaned his diet up. He started doing class with his kids every night of the week. I see him in the gym in the morning. He's down 60 pounds. He come in the other day just on cloud nine, tell me he's not diabetic. He went back to the doctor. He kicked it. And, he's still got a long way to go. He's told me that, but we talk. If I don't see him at the gym, I message him, hey, man, where you at today? What's going on? We chat about it all the time. And to see his relationship with his son now, and to see his health. Like he'll be at the gym in the morning, he's suffering, he's dying. He's still over 250 pounds, but he's lost 60, probably lost more than that. And he's smiling. And it's like, man, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have a six pack. You just have to get up there and go do it every day. And his son wants to work out with him now. And it had to be just a life changing year. But I'm not taking credit for what he did, but not being afraid to say, hey man, you're making excuses. And by me setting an example in my life, I hope motivated him to do the same. We've got to do more of that because we're holding those around you accountable is helping them. You can't look at it like you're being disrespectful or you're being hateful. If you see them doing something that's not right, you got to say, hey man, what's going on with you? That's not, did you just, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that.
Starts to hold yourself accountable though first too, right? Because you don't want to be that hypocrite that is like, speaking out of both sides of your mouth, like you're calling this guy out, and then the minute you're saying something to him, it's like you're participating in the exact same behavior. Matthew, what's the you mentioned like you're still on a growth, which we all are, right? What's the one area personally that either personally or professionally that you're working on right now that is going to, it's either limiting the scalability right now or limiting the growth of some of the businesses or even your growth as a father? Like what's the one thing you're kind of focused on within yourself?
Balance. I've always been great at time management. I've always been pretty good at reading people, but it's balancing it. I'll find that I'll go hard with one business and I'll let stuff slip at another one. Or I won't be on top of things over here when I've got something going on over there. And it's finding that balance and delegating. And I've gotten so much better at delegating in the last 6 months. And I feel, when I hear people talk about struggling, well, I just struggle to delegate. You need to be busier because I struggled to delegate too. And then it got to a point that I had no choice. I started turning over social media to office managers where I'd always held that, to myself. Well, I've got to do all my social media myself for my businesses. No, delegate it off, and I'm in the process of building out a staff to a lot of the stuff of the businesses will go up to the office managers and then the need to go stuff goes to me. I'll still be in the field working with everybody, going here, doing my things, but a lot of the BS, hey, do you want to do this advertising or that? A lot of those emails, like that is where I'm almost trying to build that insulation for me to where it goes to them and then it comes up to me. And that's just part of growth. You can't do that in the beginning. You can't be a sole entrepreneur, hire one employee and then be like, all right, just let me know if something really needs my attention. Like you're slow it down there, bud. You got to build up to it. I'm to a point, multiple projects going that I'm forced to do it. And it's forcing me to get better at it. And there's times I'll sit down, I'll start doing a task. I'm like, send an email. Hey, take care of this. And they're happy to it because if you're constantly doing it, I found that it would make my staff feel like I didn't have faith in them. Whereas I felt like, well, this task is my response. I'm the owner. I took too much ownership on myself. I took too much responsibility of coaching my team. I would constantly set up all the practices, constantly follow up with them, constantly do all this stuff that when I just stepped away, they did it themselves. I could guide them. And that has been the biggest thing for me, that I realized I was really limiting my success by being like, well, I want to delegate this to this person because, well, they might be upset with me, or they might think I'm just pawning off my work to go screw off. But I realized that I had to do that because then they felt valued. Then I needed to follow up with them and build that. And that was a real struggle. That was something that I knew I was doing it wrong, but I just kept doing it because I'm a hard worker. And at the end of the day, when things get tough, I dive back into just being the hardest worker in the room. And I had to learn to adjust that. And I feel that holds a lot of people back because they're like, oh, I just can't delegate. I can't do it. Man, when you hit those levels, you have to, or you're just going to stall.
Yeah, well, that's the bottleneck for most small businesses, and that's what is going to limit and cap their growth is the owner, the founder, holding on to everything so close. I mentioned at the beginning, like nobody's going to care about the success to the level that the founder does, but people do like they do value the work that they do. People want to do good at their jobs. Now they may not have the vision of starting a company and casting this thing and creating something out of new, but the office manager wants to be organized and on time and make sure that both the company is being managed, but also, the service providers are getting good service as well. The cleaning staff like wants to take care and like they take pride in the things that they're doing. That's definitely a limiting thing that I've seen. And I've done quite a bit of business coaching and consulting as well. And it's like, that's the thing is like people holding things too close to the chest. Um, the limited time, yeah, the limited time that we have here, I want to maybe kind of circle back about your faith journey. You mentioned not grown up as like quote unquote kind of religious, right? The audience is well aware of kind of my faith journey, not really having any relationship with God or Christ as a young man, and then kind of having this awakening around 34, 35, and it just radically transformed my life. Curious for you, was there kind of a clear defining moment kind of in your life where, God just, whether it just kind of smacked you upside the head and said, wake up, or, what was that like? And kind of how has your view on even, religion versus relationship, I'm not sure if that's language that you use. How's that kind of evolved in your life?
With me, I grew up, we went to a very, there was only like 6 kids in church. Everybody was older, went to a Methodist church. My grandfather, you know, didn't understand things, but if I would ever ask a question, because the Bible says, Matthew, that type of stuff. What a lot of us had in our, our age is very similar, and I just stayed away from it. I never liked it. I was the guy that if I did go to church for stuff, I was cracking jokes and whispering and teasing my mom. I'd go to church with my mom, the pastor come out, start talking about tithings. I'd poke her in the side like I was robbing her, just silly, silly stuff. And about it, I'd say a year and a half. Yeah, probably a year and a half now. I started picking up on things in songs. I'd hear a song on the radio, and I'm not talking like I put it on Joy FM, like I was listening to hip hop or something. I'd be like, whoa, they kind of just talk about God, huh? I'd change the song. And I'd hear a personal development coach. I'd be on a podcast, and they'd start talking, people I really respected about their faith. I'd change podcasts. And like these little whispers kept happening, just little things. I just kept picking up on it. And if I did hear someone was like, I trust Jesus and I trust where everything's going to go, I'd be like, oh, give me a break. Like I began to envy them. Oh, I wish I could just be like, ooh, I trust Jesus. I'm just going to go in and go to bed now. Everything will work out. God's going to take care of it. And I would mock it openly. Like my wife, this in the past 6 months with everything I've done, she just looks at me. She's like, who are you now? Like what? Because I would openly mock it, but things just kept happening, little things. And I refer to them. I spoke with a group at called the Troy Dream Center, and it's a faith-based rehab for gentlemen getting out of jail. And I was asked to speak to them, and I described it to them as a tap. And I just kept hearing a tap, and I was ignoring it. Well, I would do different things in the community. I'd work closely with Anchored Hope Church where I go. I'd done a fight, donated $5,000 to them, and I got a call from Pastor Michael to come bid their basement. I said, all right. And I went, gave him a bid, went home, or went, looked at it, went home. My office was writing it up. Wife does the office work, goes, what do you want me to put this price? Well, we had recently, right around that time, had some teens tragically killed in a car accident. And their goal with this basement area was to make it a teen room. And I said, tell them if they're going to do something for kids, I'll paint the whole place for free. I don't give a crap what it costs. As long as he's good with painting the walls gray, because I had a falling out with a customer, really bad ordeal. The guy cheated me out of the money. I kept all the paint, but I had a ton of gray. So as long as he's good with gray, paint it gray. I got a bunch of it. It's free. It's satin. Most homeowners don't paint their house satin. Satin's more of a commercial sheen. So I was like, hey, and it's satin. Works. It'll be easy to clean. So we sent him the paper. He sent back. He's like, hey, you forgot a price. I said, there's no price, brother. I'm gonna paint it. Just let me know when and where. So we painted it. My guys were there painting it, and I sent Michael a text. I said, hey man, you want an accent wall? He goes, yeah, sure. Why not? I was like, yeah, I just realized that guy's house we did. I just got some paint sitting here. I don't even know what color it is. We'll paint an accent wall. All right. I said, just tell the guys, you point, they'll paint that wall, whatever color's in the can. So I went to meet him on the final day of the project. We're walking down the steps, and him and I have been friends. We share the same tattoo artist. Our lives have been like, I was that guy that said, if I'm going to go to church, I'm going to Michael. Like, if I'm going anywhere, I'm going to him. But I never went. So we're in the basement, and he goes, how did you match our logo? So what do you mean? He goes, that blue. That matches the church's logo. Our logo is a unique blue. How did you match it? And I'm getting goosebumps. Tell you this, I got goosebumps. I was like,
I'm literally going to show you. Like, I don't know if you can see it on the
the
camera.
same
I
thing.
have him as well, man.
And I looked at him. I was like, I didn't match that. And I told him the story with the homeowner. The guy fired us because he wanted us to paint the house in this weird order. And I stood my ground and refused to do it. And I ended up with all this paint, got cheated out of some money. And he goes, I want to share something with you. He goes, I didn't call painting companies. He said, I woke up with the overwhelming urge to call you. And now we're here. And I said, you know what? I'm not very religious. And I said this, I said, but, and I looked up at the heavens. I'm like, before you drop a piano on me walking up Main Street so Michael Scott comes see me in church or at the hospital, I said, I'll see you Sunday. I said, I walked him through it. I said, there's been a whole lot of whispers going on. And if this isn't, I need you there Sunday, sir, polite, it was like he wrote me an email, said, hey, the next step is this loud whisper is going to become a yell, and it's going to get ugly. Something ugly is going to happen. And I started back, and I was like, okay, we're going to go to church. Whatever. Then I had a gentleman on my podcast, a good longtime friend, and our podcast immediately went into religion. Him finding religion, me finding religion, men's guidance. He has a program for give guidance for men, the Guild Fellowship. And we just dove into it. It was like 2 hours, supposed to be a 40-minute podcast. 2 hours there, the studio's like, hey guys, and he's a detective. So my wife's messaging her, you lost? I'm like, I'm with the cops, relax. But then I had another gentleman on, came in, same thing. We went right into religion and God and trusting in Jesus. And it was like he was sending me the messages and putting me in front of these people intentionally to show me where my faith needed to be, and that I needed to listen to the journey I was being sent on, because it wasn't that all of a sudden I wanted to speak and all of a sudden I wanted to write a book and I wanted to do all these things. I was being sent in a direction of intent. And it's still wild. A neighbor recently, he's a guy I hang out with at the fair, nice guy, message said, hey man, can you run me a Denny's, get some food? He's well old enough to have his own vehicle. I was like, yeah. Wife's like, where are you going? I said, I'm gonna go grab Nick, run him Denny's. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, just stop it. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. And it's, she gets a giggle out of it because it's been life-changing, and it's been peaceful knowing that I'm on something for a reason. And even the first couple times I tried to talk about it, I would stutter a little bit. And I was weird with it, because I was like, man, I'm saying these things out loud because it was all in my head. I sat and verbalized it, and it's been amazing. And what's been wild is when I posted, I felt this. I went, like, the second time we went back to church, I felt this need to post about it. And I was like, man, I want to be that guy. So I'm like, oh, look, I found church. I'm a business owner. Use my business. And I had so many messages from people asking about the church and sharing trauma with me about it that I was blown away. I was like, okay, I get it. I need to talk about this. I get it.
Thank you for sharing that, Matthew. God, I mean, an hour in, like, those last 6-7 minutes, powerful stuff, man. Bring things to a close, man. I know obviously your businesses are local, but you got some exciting things with some speaking and some other, things that you kind of have in the works. point the audience, point the guys out there where, you know, they can follow you, learn more about this journey, kind of things that you're on, and then we'll bring the conversation to close with a last and final question.
Best way to find me is Instagram, Matthew Boyer Official, or on Facebook under Matthew Boyer. The got a website going together, but I don't have anything up yet. Right now it's just my business websites for Boyer Academy stuff, but something on the personal journey with the speaking stuff's being put together. So just happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, check it out. We'll link all that. And for those of you in the St. Louis area, if you need some painting done, you make a recommendation. If you want to get into the martial arts, check out the Boyer Academy. Check out Boyer. Is it Boyer Painting? Yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt, you kind of know the drill here. We'd love to end the show with the same question. Title of the show is called The Superhuman Life. So as we bring today's conversation to a close, Matt, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Living every day to your fullest, not holding yourself back and making excuses. I would say it'd be the best way, because everybody's here for a different reason. You can't say that, well, I'm going to do the same thing that Matt's doing, because you're not here to do the same thing I'm doing. I'm not here to do the same thing my neighbor's doing. I'm not here to do the same thing you're doing. You've got to get up and live every day to your fullest, because it may be gone tomorrow.
Guys, share this one, rate, review if you're getting value out of there. Make sure to connect with Matt. He's got some exciting things coming up in the speaking and coaching space. But as always, guys, we love you. We'll see you next week.